And the party has united behind Liz Truss.
No, they haven't.
Yes, they have.
They haven't.
I'm sat here as a Rishi
Schatz, Michael Gove. They've just forced the government into a massive, humiliating U-turn on the second. They haven't united. They've forced the government into a massive U-turn.
They've said to the government, this is a political distraction that benefits no one.
They haven't united. The party has not united around this.
They'll unite around this.
Office Minister Gillian Keegan. Morning, Gillian.
Good morning, Matt.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Are you having fun?
I am having fun, yes.
Are you?
Yeah, very much so.
Well, the only person I've asked at Tory Conference so far who seems to be having fun.
You must be asking the wrong people.
No, people keep coming up to me and telling me it's all going disaster. Right, let's talk about the U-turn. Do you welcome it?
I definitely welcome this was a political distraction. You know, it wasn't a huge economic issue. It was a political distraction. So I do welcome it very much, yes. And we can get on to talking about actually the rest of that plan, which has been way overlooked, but is actually got some really, really strong elements to it.
Does it concern you that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were capable of such a terrible political distraction, mistake, error, bombing in the polls in the way that they have?
I mean, what really concerns me is whether you can react quickly to what has happened, whether you can be pragmatic, you know, nobody can ever be perfect, and I've never been perfect. If you can react quickly, then that's as good as it gets for most things.
Did you think it was a good idea when they announced it?
Not specifically, you know, I always knew that it was going to be a political problem. I mean, let's be honest, this was a political trap that was set by Gordon Brown in the dying days of his role as PM, right? And I paid the 50% tax that, you know, I was in business then. And I remember how devastating it was, because actually it meant you were paying about 65% tax. And there's something in your mind which is like, really? You know, only 35% for me, and I'm doing all these hours. So I was a business person then. It was set as a political trap. Obviously, it went down from 50 to 45.
And this week,
it's not an economic
thing. This week, Kwasi Kwarteng fell into that trap, didn't he? All these years on, 12 years later, and he's fallen into the trap.
It's the wrong thing that it's there, but it is a political trap that was left. And, you know, right at this time, it probably wasn't the ultimate time, because what it's proven is it's been a distraction, and it's distracted away from a fantastic energy protection plan for businesses and for people. For 2 years, you know, Labour were talking about 6 months and not really including businesses. Yeah. It's the best in Europe, at least. It could be even best in the world. And it's not been discussed at all. All that protection, all of that investment of taxpayers' money, and it's been not discussed at all because of this political distraction. So I definitely welcome it.
It sounds like you think at some point the 45p tax rate should go.
In theory, it should never have been put in there, right? It should never have been put in there. But it's not an economic issue. It's a political trap, and that's what it's there for.
I want to share a quote with you.
But sorry, I'm saying that as a business person who had to pay it for years.
I want to share a quote with you. This is not the time for uncosted tax cuts and arbitrary spending commitments. This is a time for stability and sensible financial management, core Conservative values.
Yeah.
Do you remember saying that? You wrote that when you were backing Rishi Sunak.
I will have said that, and I would still agree with that, absolutely.
So you don't support any of the uncosted tax cuts which were announced by Kwasi Kwarteng?
The costs are going to come, right? So this is the OBR. I understand why, and I understand the issue about the 10 weeks and all of that. But it's clear that you do have to cost them. And by the way, I will have also, if you want to pick up another thing I said about spooking the markets and things like that, you know, the reality is that's why you have the OBR.
They have spooked the markets.
But you understand, you know, if you want to do something quickly, because obviously there's not much time left, you know, we've got 2 years or so till the next election, you want to put your plans in place quickly. I would say, you know, we're all very much looking forward to the 23rd of November.
But you said this is not the time for uncosted tax cuts. Yeah. And the Chancellor, in the government that you serve in, announced £45 billion worth of uncosted tax cuts.
Which the financial plan and fiscal plan is coming on the 23rd of November, which was then when it will be fully costed.
Well, why not announce them then? Why announce them last week? Spooking the markets, pushing up people's mortgages, scaring business investors. You know, the Bank of England had to step in £65 billion worth of extra borrowing. Why do it? Why not just stick to the energy package? That was what people were worried about. There was no need for Kwasi Kwarteng to blow everything up 10 days ago.
I think it was possibly because of the limited time left to get the maximum impact, you know, trying to really kickstart this growth, putting the package together.
They take the pound.
The pound is now back and recovered.
Well, I mean, boasting that the pound is now back to where before the Chancellor...
It was on its way back already.
Yeah.
It was actually
that was after the Bank of England
yesterday.
stepped in and reassured the markets.
It was on its way back already, and, you know, now it's back up to 112. You know, there's been you could say there's been a bit of a market overreaction to the 45%.
Do you think that what we've seen so far under Liz Truss is a time of stability and sensible financial management?
It's a growth plan, and this is the big focus in terms of the growth plan. Do I think the biggest part of this is actually the energy protection
Well, that's my
plan.
point.
The
Why not?
biggest part
They
of
could have
it.
just done that, reassure people on their bills, then wait until November and set out costed tax cuts.
The second biggest part of it is simplifying and deregulating. That is actually huge, and a lot of businesses have very much welcomed all the things that none of you have talked about have been very much welcomed by businesses. So I think that is important. In terms of bringing forward the 1p in a pound, well, again, that's popular. That's something that Labour have said they would do as well. So there's not a cigarette paper between anybody on that. The real difference was this 45% going back down to 40, which I say is a political distraction. Very much welcome it going.
I don't think that is just why people are cross. People are cross because the impact of what the Chancellor announced led to a fall in the value of the pound against the dollar. Mortgage rates went up. We had lenders withdrawing mortgages from the market as people are about to buy homes as a direct result of what the Chancellor did. That's why people are angry. That's why the Labour Party got a 33-point lead in the polls.
So I assume you, as I do, and I'm sure you do, have watched the euro, the yen, and all the other currencies against the dollar, and you've seen almost exactly the same pattern and trend. So it isn't just what's happened with the pound is the strength of the dollar.
So why did the Bank of England suddenly decide last week to spend an extra £65 billion?
Because of something in the pensions market that I actually wasn't aware of. I'm not an expert on the pensions market, but the way they had been funding aspects of that, which was unknown, looked at risk. So that's why it's very specific.
That was as a result of what the Chancellor announced?
Or as a result of how they were funding the pension schemes.
So why did it happen last week?
I think you could ask either question.
Why did it happen last week? All of these things happened in the...
Because it shone a light on something that perhaps we should have been aware of anyway, because it's not necessarily best practice. I think you need to look very specifically. I'm not an expert on that issue, but when that issue came up, it was something I was unaware of, actually, and I think many people were unaware of. Maybe we need to look at what was happening there. But that's why it specifically shone a light on something that was very, very specific in the 30-year long-term investment underwriting pensions. Very, very specific.
Lisa, do you want to come in on it?
Gillian Keegan, in the leadership contest, you backed Rishi Sunak. He warned that in the advice of Liz Truss's own economic advisor, Patrick Minford, unfunded tax cuts would lead to interest rates spiking at 7%. That's the forecast we've now got for interest rates reaching next year. Don't you think still that Rishi Sunak would be better for the economy and better for the country as Prime Minister?
It's not my decision. I get one vote, right?
But I'm asking for your
vote.
from the vantage point where you are standing now, wouldn't you prefer that he were Prime Minister?
Not at all. Not at all. I get one vote. I don't get to choose. And the party has united behind Liz Truss.
No, they haven't.
Yes, they have.
They haven't.
I'm sat here as a
Grant
Rishi
Shapps,
Sunak.
Michael Gove. They've just forced the government into a massive, humiliating U-turn on the second. They haven't united. They've forced the government into a massive U-turn.
They've said to the government, this is a political distraction that benefits no one.
They haven't
Get rid of
united.
it.
The party has not united around Liz Truss.
Unite around this.
They're united about the humiliation of the Chancellor.
Not
That's what
at
they're
all.
united about.
Not at all. You know, they'll unite behind the fact that something which has got very little economic value has become a massive political distraction. And the plan, which has got, a lot in it and a lot of meat in it, has been completely ignored because of this political distraction. They will 100% be delighted now that we're all Conservatives. We care massively about reducing that poll lead. We care massively about making sure this country is in
Liz
good
Truss can turn it around, that
Conservative
33-point poll lead?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's not... it's a quick reaction to, what happened as a result of the political distraction. And, people feeling... all these things may be happening. And by the way, interest rates, again, look at interest rates across the whole of the world. This is happening everywhere. But, looking as though there's an unfairness, the British people, fairness is in our DNA. And looking like, at this point, there's something that looks unfair, that looks like it's benefiting someone who doesn't actually need it, that element rubs people up massively the wrong way. And it's a political distraction. And I don't think we should have done it, but it's great that it's gone.
I mentioned at the beginning, obviously, you are Foreign Office Minister.
I am.
You've only been in the job about a month. What are your priorities in your new role?
Well, I'm a Minister for Africa,
Yeah.
so the first thing is to get to know Africa. I mean, I've travelled to Africa on business a lot, but that's many years ago now. Africa's very, very strategic. Not only will 1 in 4 of the population be African by 2050, it is also very strategic from the perspective of investments, critical minerals, and obviously those demographic changes. There's a lot of issues in some countries. There's conflict in some. There's Russia-backed aggression in others. There's obviously the Belt Road Initiative. So there's a lot of things that we need to do. And of course, we have the Commonwealth. And it was great to meet many of the African leaders who came across, for Her Majesty's, her late Majesty's funeral. It was great to meet so many of them. And just to see how much of a shared history we've got and a lot of shared values as well.
And of course, that the state visit of the South African president coming.
Yes,
yeah, that was confirmed next month.
Very, very exciting. I hope I get to be involved in some way.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. It's really good to see Gillian Keegan. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
That's the Foreign Office Minister Gillian Keegan there joining us on Times Radio, and we'll discuss more of the government's policies with Michael Gove, who apparently is united behind what the government's doing. Michael Gove joining us at 11 o'clock here on Times Radio. Up next, Alice Thompson and Rachel Sylvester will be here to pick over the news.